Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today we're going to discuss the top 5 Sentinel starting classes for 1.0. With these you'll be able to gear and go all the way through the campaign, absolutely destroying it without any required gear like uniques or special idols. With that in mind, these builds usually are some of the fastest leveling ones, and also most of them can do hardcore without any issues. But let's go ahead and dive into just what 5 they are. Coming in at number 1, we have the Holy Trail Paladin, and this one is great for leveling. You get access to Javelin fairly early, and then you turn Javelin into a dodge skill by taking the Holy Trail node that lays a trail out in front of you of lightning and fire damage over time. The reason it's so good is because you can scale up the base damage of Holy Trail through just stacking healing effectiveness. Every 5% healing effectiveness you have is another 1 flat spell damage for it, which you can't do with a lot of other skills. And healing effectiveness is very easy to scale up. You can easily get 1000% of it by the time you get some gear in the end game, and that allows for it to have 200 flat damage, which is an absurd amount on top of your weapon. And as a paladin, you can also get spell damage for wearing a shield, so you can be very tanky. Now the more you scale that healing effectiveness, the more that Holy Trail also heals you. So this build is basically just throwing the healing trail out, letting enemies who stand on it die, and you walk on it to be healed at the same time. It heals for 25 health a second, it lasts for 6 seconds, but with all that healing effectiveness, you can basically get all of your health back instantly. At 1000% healing effectiveness, you're going to be healing for about 300 a second, which is huge. Overall, this is a very good starter build. It doesn't require any uniques or any idols to get it going, and it's very tanky since you have a good source of healing, and it scales all the way through the campaign and into the end game. So with that, that's why I leave it as the number 1 on the starter build for the Sentinel class. Coming in at number 2, we have the Nova Hammerdin build, and this is going to be using Hammer Throw as a Nova, which means you'll be shooting out 8 projectiles around you in all directions, and you can scale the damage of this very, very well. There are several nodes inside of the skill tree that will let you convert it to like orbiting or chaining, and you can instead make those give you additional critical strike multiplier as well as just more hit damage. You can cast it to where when you're out of mana, it will still go off. It has a 0 mana cost when you're out of mana, so you can constantly spam it, not even worry about your mana. And then at the same time as all of that, with the idols that allow you to have critical strike throwing multiplier, as well as the recent change by EHG to allow you to put flat added throwing damage on a bunch of slots for your items, it allows you to scale the damage of it very, very well, and you can just run through echoes extremely quick. And because you have access to things like Sigils of Hope for even more damage, Holy Ore for even more defense, and then of course you get some leech into the build because you hit for so much, your life will always be full. This one's being ran by Volca in the gameplay, and he's at over 1000 corruption with it. The nice thing is you can level with this as you start with hammers fairly early in the game and can start speccing into it and building towards this as soon as you want. Coming in at number 3, we have the Echo Warpath Void Knight, and what's really cool about this is outside of the Void Knight, and until recently when they added a new node inside of Warpath itself allowing it to echo, it was never able to echo before, but now you can have multiple instances of Warpath up, which really boosted its damage, especially for single target, making Warpath into a very viable build for the Void Knight. With that, it also looks really cool, but again, this is going to be a build that you start off with right off the bat early in the game. Doesn't require any uniques, doesn't require any idols. Gearing for it is really straightforward and easy, but of course it's going to be a 1-button build from beginning to end. You are literally just going to spin the entire time, and that's not for everyone. However, if you are a spin to win fanatic, you can definitely start this one with the starter cycle in 1.0 and have absolutely no issues getting it going, and it goes well into the end game. You're going to find that with health on hit and with leech, you're very, very tanky, and at the same time the damage, especially once you get those echoes going mid and late end game, your damage is going to get insane. With all of that in mind, and just how easy it is to play, that's why I put it on this list, and why you should definitely give it a shot in 1.0. Coming in at number 4, we have the Manifest Armor Forge Guard, and if you've been wanting to try on a Forge Guard, the Manifest Armor is the way to go. With it, you're going to summon basically a forged up bodyguard that's going to be a minion. It's going to be called the Manifest Armor, and then you get to throw shields at it, causing him to do sweeping attacks. Now the unique nice thing about this is not only are you attacking your own minion, which will kind of remind you of the Bone Nova Retaliation Golem where you hit him with marrow shards, but on this one it's a little cooler because your minion will scale with stats of your gear. You can make him scale up with your sword, your chest, your boots, and your gloves, allowing you for some unique interactions and unique way of scaling his damage in the game. Also, as a Forge Guard, you're going to be very tanky. You can get leech and health back when you throw the shield, which is really nice. Your Forged Guard will also take a lot of the taunting for you, as he'll be the one getting attacked most of the time as long as you stay behind him. And then of course, naturally, as a Forged Guard, you have access to tons of defense, like tons of armor, so that you don't have to worry about taking too big of hits. With all of that in mind, and the fact that this requires no uniques and no idols to get going, that's why I've recommended it as a starter guide for 1.0. Coming in at number 5, we have the Hammerdin Void Knight, and with this one, you're going to have your throw hammers in an orbit around you, causing them to orbit you, and then as you move, they move with you, which is going to be a real good reminder of Diablo 2 if you played it. But then also, every time that those hammers hit an enemy, you're going to have a chance to call down smites, which will do a ton of void damage for you and help finish off those enemies. On top of that, you'll be able to leech both the damage you do from the hits from hammers and from the spell hits of the smites themselves, allowing you to have tons of health leech, which makes it very viable for hardcore as well. Now, I should remind you that in order for the smites to be procced, you do need idols in this build to have a % chance on throwing attack hits to be procced and come down from the heavens. So this may not be the most beginner friendly one, as you will need those idols, but it's still completely doable even without the smites being procced and then unlocking those idols later. Also, with COF faction in 1.0, I expect that you'll be able to target farm things like those idols much quicker in the game. They have a chance of falling for you during the campaign. I've had them fall for me during the campaign before, but that kind of means that you're depending upon good RNG luck to really get the build popping early. So this may not be one that you really want to level with so much, or at least not fully doing the smite damage. You might want to go full hammer throw damage, and then once you get the idols, transfer over to the spell damage. But overall, it's a very powerful build. In this gameplay footage by 𝐁𝐁𝐿, it's at 800 plus corruption. Again, very powerful, very easy to play, and very visually pleasing with all of the orbiting hammers and smites coming down. That's going to be my top 5 starting 1.0 builds for you for the Sentinel class. If you plan on playing Sentinel, I would definitely aim for one of these builds, as they are all very good and very powerful in the end game. With all that in mind, let me know in the comments below which build you plan on starting with, and we can discuss it. As always, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.